Hi, in this part we're going to look at how to choose the correct mountain bike for you. What are the main considerations? The terrain, how extreme or how smooth, riding style, so how much climbing is going to be involved, whether there's going to be any big jumps, drops, how rough the terrain is and how your bike and you are going to cope with it, and also any distances or racing, anything specialist as well. Okay, so the first bike we're going to look at here is our do-it-all hardtail bike. So this is going to be suitable for all types of mountain biking. Some will be easier than others, but certainly capable of riding everything. The hardtail frame basically means the rear end of the frame has no suspension whatsoever. What that does mean is it's nice and efficient for pedalling, but it's not going to be very forgiving on the rougher trails. You're going to feel a lot more of the lumps and bumps. However, you will have a relatively short or mid-travel suspension fork to help with the bumps coming through the front end of the bike and the handlebars. Most importantly, this suspension is there to provide grip and control when the terrain is more exciting, shall we say. And one of the other important parts to do with suspension I was going to mention is travel, which means the amount that this suspension fork is going to move with impacts. This is going to be limited by the physical product. Some will be designed for shorter travel than others that will be designed for longer travel and essentially bigger bumps. All of the bikes we're going to be looking at today feature hydraulic disc brakes front and rear. The reason for this is reliable, consistent braking and maximum power on steeper and more technical descents. There's going to be wide tyres featured on all of them. We're going to look at wheel sizes. We do have 26-inch, 29-inch and 650B options available. 26-inch wheels, originally introduced on the first mountain bikes. For most people starting out mountain biking, 26-inch wheels are a good option. They're widely available, so are spares, replacements, and they're easy to work with. Riding position is going to be nice and comfortable on the bike, with the saddle high enough for decent pedalling efficiency, but also low enough that you're able to move around and control the bike over the terrain. Gear ratio wise, we're going to have a lot of choice here. As this bike is designed to be capable and ride on almost anything, you're going to have very low gears for the steep climbs and very high gears for an off-road bike, so that you're able to maintain a good speed down fire roads and easier trails. Next bike we're going to look at is a variation, still a hardtail, but this is slightly different and it's a 29-inch wheel. 29-inch wheels have been introduced in America in recent years and suddenly starting to make a big name for themselves on the international scene. The main benefits for 29-inch wheels are improved grip, improved rolling efficiency, so they are very suitable for cross-country style riding and riding where pedalling efficiency is slightly more important. However, the downsides to the 29-inch wheel bikes are the overall bike is considerably longer than a 26-inch wheel bike. That does make for a different riding position when on the bike, and it can feel unusual to some who are accustomed to riding a 26-inch wheel bike. In tight and twisty terrain, perhaps like you get in woodland, sometimes it can feel a little bit slow and sluggish handling wise. However, at higher speed on more open terrain, it should feel much more stable and much more easily controlled. The other third option, the most recent introduction, is the 650B wheel bike, which fits quite comfortably in between the two. It introduces more grip, better rolling efficiency, however doesn't feel as long and sluggish as a 29-inch wheel bike in tighter, more technical situations. Next category we're going to look at, more specifically to cross-country style riding, more in keeping with a race bike, we're going to see some additional features, so we're going to focus on those. Still going to be a hardtail, so no rear suspension. However, what we're introducing is high performance equipment, so a little bit more cost, but the benefits outweigh that for the racers. We're now moving on to a carbon fibre frame. It allows the designer to have a little bit more input into the creative process of what's possible with the material. You can create more interesting shapes that are going to give you lighter weight, greater stiffness where you require it, and more comfort compliance where necessary. The designers of this bike have introduced more material around the bottom bracket and chainstay areas for power transfer, and slightly less material on the seat stays to ensure more compliance and comfort for the rider on the bike. With a slightly larger budget, you're going to see improved drivetrain, so that's the gears and the brakes on the bike are also going to be of a higher quality with more adjustment. Lighter weight also keeps the overall weight of the bike down, making it easier for climbing and pedalling efficiency. Front suspension fork is going to be short travel. We're probably looking at around 100 or 120 millimeters of suspension travel. The idea behind this is it's going to be just enough for those situations where it's needed, but you're not carrying excessive weight or subjecting the bike to having a softer spring and using too much travel and not being as efficient and lightweight as it can be. Options such as this bike will also have a remote lockout operated by a switch, which essentially removes the suspension movement and creates a rigid front fork on the bike for the optimum efficiency. With women cycling on the increase, what we're finding is manufacturers are producing a wider range of women-specific models. There are a few subtle changes and differences with these that are going to really tailor them to female cyclists. Generally speaking, women have longer legs and shorter torsos. The positioning on the bike means that the handlebar and saddle are slightly closer together, so that the top tube of the bike is a slightly shorter length. Normally women have a narrower shoulder width, so you'll find a slightly narrower handlebar in comparison to what you would on a men's bike. Brake levers will always be positioned so they're in a nice comfortable reach. Wind-specific components could involve the degree of comfort and enjoyment from the bike. The compound of the grips will, generally speaking, be a softer compound to ensure it absorbs more vibration and is generally more comfortable to hold. The saddle itself, in keeping with a different pelvic structure and shape, will be a slightly different layout and will be designed to fit a woman's anatomy perfectly. Styling of the bike will be similar with some differences as far as graphics and colours, but overall will not be screaming pink or purple as used to be the case commonly. Suspension, drivetrain, brakes, wheels, all these components will be the same specification as what you'll find on a man's bike, providing the same benefits of lightweight, performance and durability. With the introduction of air suspension, what this means is that riders can tailor the suspension system to accommodate their weight and their preferences, which enables bikes such as this to be tailored to the rider. Therefore, there is no component specification changes required in difference to a man's bike.